we see more people, doing things, recreating. State park visitation is through the roof.
Do you guys have predictions on what the impact on over-the-counter licenses will be in Colorado? Do you see any changes compared to past years because of COVID?
That is if you want to, the $54 million question.
Hey guys, welcome back to the eHunter Newscast. I'm your host for this episode, Taryn Hunt. Before we get into the episode, I want to thank our title sponsor, Vortex Optics. Vortex supports everything that we do here at eHunter. We are grateful for them and their support. As you're getting ready for your hunts that are coming up as soon as next month or later in the fall, make sure that you check out vortexoptics.com for any rangefinders, rifle scopes, binoculars, any of your optics needs. Go check them out. On today's episode, I sit down with Randy Hampton. He's the Public Information Officer for the Northwest region here in Colorado. We talk about the effects of COVID-19 on hunting in 2020 and how it'll affect your hunt later this fall or even again as soon as next month. He shares some great information on the effects it's had on the CPW as well as state parks and other areas. So if you have concerns or questions about how the coronavirus will affect your hunts this year, stay tuned to this podcast. If you guys have any questions, please reach out to us. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. We appreciate all your guys' support. We greatly appreciate it. So, all right, guys, let's jump right into this podcast with Randy Hampton. All right, guys, welcome back to the eHunter Newscast. Excited to be back with you again for this episode. This episode is near and dear to my heart because I live here in Colorado, and this is all about Colorado. And so super excited to record this podcast. Our guest today is Randy Hampton. He's the Public Information Officer for the Northwest region of Colorado. Welcome to the call, Randy.
Hey, thank you very much for having us. We're happy to be here. Always happy to join you on the podcast.
Well, we appreciate. I'm so grateful for you guys. I've reached out to so many people, and in my position as a podcast host, I reach out to. I shouldn't even say this, but I reach out to hundreds of people and ask, "Hey, you interested in recording a podcast?" And I get turned down quite a bit, and so it's nice when I get a response back saying, "Hey, yeah, absolutely, let's hop on a podcast." So I sure appreciate you doing this with me.
Hey, not a problem at all. It's what we're here for. Our job is to provide information to the public, and we're learning more and more about the new ways that people are getting their information. So it's kind of neat to be able to kind of narrow cast that out to the people that are interested in hearing about specific topics. Whereas in the past, we'd have to, rely on a newspaper or maybe a TV newscast to get information out there, and it doesn't always hit the right audience. So podcasting is something that we as an agency are really embracing and trying to take on. So we're always happy to help you.
Oh, I appreciate that. You're absolutely right. At eHunter, we have a written format online where people can go online and read the articles that we put up there. And the topic that we're going to talk about today, we actually put up an article recently about that. But it's interesting because you're right. The way information is delivered nowadays is so much different. And podcasts, especially, it seems like for the hunting industry, and I guess I should say for most everything, podcast is kind of the way to go to get a lot of that information. And so, yeah, super excited to have you on. I appreciate the department and your guys' willingness to share this information. At eHunter, what we try to do is just kind of go to the source. You can read a lot of stuff out there in newspapers and things like that, but it sure is helpful when we can go to the source like yourself and get kind of the behind the scenes type of information. So really appreciate you doing that. Before we jump into the topic of today, Randy, if you wouldn't mind just giving a quick introduction of yourself. I read off your title, but if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about yourself, what you do, what your role is, and things like that.
Absolutely. So, Taryn, as you said, I'm the Public Information Officer, the spokesperson for Colorado Parks and Wildlife's Northwest region. So my job is to communicate information to people that are out there. I started with the agency back in 2003. So about 17 years. We won't worry about the 6 years that I took a little bit of a vacation and lived in Hawaii, which was awesome. But, really glad to be back in Colorado, back home, doing what I love and talking about Colorado and the outdoors in Northwest Colorado and all the opportunities that it has, whether you are a wildlife watcher, a photographer, an angler, or a sports person, you're out there hunting, whatever. Colorado's got plenty to offer, and I love talking about it. So that's kind of my job. I get paid to do it, and people tell me all the time, "Man, you have the best job in the world," and I think they're right.
I'm pretty jealous. I'm not gonna lie. This is not my full-time quote unquote real job. I'm a nurse by trade, and I'm a little bit jealous. I wouldn't mind having your job, talking about, like you just said, the outdoors, the hunting, the fishing. I could do that all day long. I wouldn't mind that. So,
yeah, it's good stuff. I have a boss that tells me, "Hey, Randy, get out there, go do stuff. Take your camper, go visit that state park, or anything in our region. Go do this, go do that. We're tracking wolves. Go check out where the wolves are. Go, So I'm constantly not only encouraged to go out and do things, but getting to do it with my boss's good graces. So it works out really well, especially when I'm working from home with COVID, that we'll talk a lot more about. But working from home for me means anywhere in my region. So I can just, load everything up in the camper and take off. And as long as I've got a cell signal and can get on and handle some emails and things, it works out pretty well.
Oh man, that is pretty sweet. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that listen to our podcast. So we have a very heavy listening audience in Colorado. So I think a lot of people will be familiar with you. A quick Google search will show you pop up in a lot of places, because you're that spokesperson for the Northwest region of Colorado, and you're the one that gets to be kind of integrated in all of these things, and you're kind of the mouth, I would say, for the Colorado Parks and Wildlife for your region. So, well, you mentioned COVID, and that's really the topic that I want to spend the next little bit talking to you about. We recently released that article about the impact of COVID on Colorado hunting this year, and I'm sure this is going to impact years to come. I mean, it's a virus; it's not going to go away, and so really I wanted to bring you on the call, Randy, and just kind of pick your brain a little bit about what those impacts will be. And so I kind of want to kick it off by asking you really the question of, kind of what has the Colorado Parks and Wildlife done to prepare for the impact of COVID? Have you guys made any changes? I think we've seen a few of those as we've gone through the application process this year, but kind of what preparations did you all do to get prepared for the coronavirus this year?
Well, it really comes at two levels, Taryn. There's a level of communication that's internal, and a level of work that we do externally. And so a lot of the change within the agency was really the internal things. What's going on with the employees, and how do we deal with that in terms of how we are accessible to our public? Mm-hmm. So, early on, we saw things like office closures, where we were literally closing down the offices, and oftentimes people would come in as they were filling out the hunting application. They'd come in, they'd talk to the people in the office, they'd say, "Hey, I'm thinking about going here, or what do you know?" And getting that one-on-one kind of communication. Well, some of that didn't happen because those offices were closed down. And the offices are open again, but everything's really limited. We limit the number of people that can be in the offices and those kinds of things. And so it's a bit of a customer service challenge. Now, externally, there's been something really interesting that's happened. Everybody wants to go outside. I guess all you have to do, we've been working for years to encourage outdoor recreation.
Right.
It's just part of our job as an agency. We're like, "Oh, get outside, go do things,"
Right.
And programs and classes and all these things to get people involved. And it turns out all we needed was a virus. Because there are people all over the place getting outside. We see more people, doing things, recreating. State park visitation is through the roof. And so we've got all these people going outside. hunting applications were up massively. Now, they're about level for out-of-state hunters, but in terms of in-state hunters, the hunting application numbers went way up. Fishing license sales are way up. We're seeing all of these things where everybody's getting outside. And so it really does kind of change the equation. And, you know, then there's all the rest of it, the unknown. What's next?
Yeah.
And we don't know that. And so that's the hard part when you say, okay, you got, you know, wow, you got all these people that wanted to apply to hunt. But what does that mean when the hunting seasons arrive? What does that mean for the guy coming in October? And that's a much harder question to answer.
Right. Right, absolutely. You know, and I agree with you. You know, as I've been out, in fact, I went out just the other day and was putting out some trail cameras on some of the areas that I'm looking to hunt here pretty soon, and I was blown away at how many people are out in the mountains right now. Like it's almost impossible to get away from people. Whereas before, you know, you hike a couple miles in, you can kind of get by yourself, but it seems like they're everywhere now. So you're absolutely right. Even from just a citizen's perspective, I'm seeing them out there. And you know, you commented on the fact that hunting application numbers have gone up. That's amazing to me. And you say it's exponential. It's not just a little bit. It's significant.
Oh, yeah.
How much it's gone up.
Yeah. It's you know, and the numbers continue to come in. We just got numbers from what we call our secondary draw, which is actually new this year, at least in the way that it's been managed. And secondary draw applications were massively up in the thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands more applicants into that secondary draw than what we've ever seen before.
Wow.
Some of that's because we changed the rules, not knowing, you know, kind of COVID before it happened, but it certainly has impacted that. And even in the primary draw, the first draw, those application numbers, like I said, just exponentially thousands, to the tune of about 40,000 more applications in the primary draw than we had last year.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, so that's kind of crazy. And then when you break down those numbers and you start digging around in it, you know, a lot of them are elk and deer applications, but most of those increases are coming from local hunters. Now, is that because, you know, Joe in Durango is going to go out hunting and he can't go or isn't sure that he'll be able to go to, you know, Montana this year, so he'll apply in Colorado? That's a possibility. That may be why we see those resident numbers up. At the same time, the non-resident numbers are about flat, level. So it isn't that we're seeing non-resident hunters not apply. We're not seeing the kind of increases we see amongst residents, but we're still seeing the non-residents that are applying and saying, hey, come October, you know, November, I know where I'll be, and they're putting in the draw.
Wow, that's amazing. That number is kind of staggering, and again, it kind of makes sense to me, you know. And you talked about the secondary draw, and just again from a personal standpoint, you know, I was looking to get a cow elk tag on that secondary draw, which I thought for sure, that would probably be a pretty easy one for me to get in the area that I was looking, and I did not get it. But it makes sense if the applications were exponentially higher for the secondary draw as well.
Yeah, and success in elk on the secondary draw was about 80%. So sorry.
Oh, so I'm just unlucky.
You landed in the 20%. Sorry about that.
Oh, well, I know that I'm unlucky. I've got many places and states where I've got 20 plus points and I still haven't drawn. So unlucky is kind of my middle name. Hey, really quick question, actually, kind of to spin off of that a little bit, as far as seeing the numbers of applications increase. I saw an article recently, in fact we published one on our site, about the need for a hunting license to attend or to access parks,
state wildlife areas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Have you seen it? Do you think part of the increase is because of that, or is that just on the hunting license side?
Well, it hasn't actually, it hasn't shown up in the numbers yet. The new regulation requires that anyone that's on a state wildlife area purchase a hunting or fishing license in Colorado. And the reason for that is all those state wildlife areas were purchased with sportsmen's dollars for sports persons' purposes. So, to provide hunting access or fishing access or to provide habitat for big game species or whatever. So those lands were bought and paid for by people who hunt and fish. And so the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission looked at that and said, people that are participating, they're going out to some of these places. And if you go to some of these state wildlife areas that maybe have a pond, the pond that you used to fish in is suddenly covered with people on their stand-up paddle boards. And all you're going to catch is another person if you're out there casting into that. And so we looked at that and we go, wow, these anglers, these sportsmen are providing the funding for that, but the people that are using these properties otherwise have not contributed. They don't put in. We are not. Our agency is not a public agency. It's a fee-funded agency.
Right.
So there's no general fund tax revenue that goes to a state wildlife area for maintenance. That money comes from sports people who hunt and fish. And so the Parks and Wildlife Commission said, well, it's time that everybody participates. So, yeah, you can go there and yeah, you can use your paddleboard, but you need to at least buy a hunting or a fishing license to support that. Well, and, for something that makes sense to the sports people of the world, and everybody kind of goes,
yeah, we applaud
There's
it.
A whole bunch of people out there that went, oh, this is the most horrible thing ever.
Right.
So it's turned into something that is kind of controversial, and yet it is the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission standing up for the people who have kind of carried the burden financially for a long, long time.
Like I said, we as sportsmen, we applaud it when it first got introduced and announced. We really stood up and applauded it, just because you're absolutely right. We feel like we've, and I say we in general, as sportsmen, we've put a lot of money into those parks, and so when the department made the decision to do this, we thought that was an excellent idea, and I hope that other states follow suit with it. To be honest with you, I think it's advantageous for the department. It's a great way to bring more funds in, and with more funds that you all can do more with it and make even better parks and places for us to go and take our families. So yeah, definitely appreciate it. Going back to the COVID, the topic, I want to talk a little bit about over-the-counter licenses. I know that's probably going to be impacted a little bit by the COVID. Do you guys have predictions on what the impact on over-the-counter licenses will be in Colorado? Do you see any changes compared to past years because of COVID?
That is if you want to, the $54 million question.
Yeah.
That's the big one. That is the one where, a majority of our funding as an agency on the wildlife side of the agency comes from non-resident elk hunters.
Yep.
And, we can divide it down any way you want to, but if we really get down to the important stuff, non-resident elk hunters, and many of those non-resident elk hunters are the guys that drive into Colorado, walk into the sporting goods store, and go, I need an over-the-counter bull license. And off they go. And that's such a big part of the revenue that it's super, super important, and yet we don't know from day to day what might be different in 2020 when October comes.
Right.
I think every person out there listening to this podcast gets it, because things change on a daily basis with what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do, and what you have to wear, and where you can go and where you can't go, and how many people you can go with, and all of these things are constantly coming at us from different directions. And so to try and guess, is there going to be a second spike? Is this second wave coming? Is that going to come in October, and all of a sudden nobody gets to go from state to state, or those things? We don't know. We hope not. We hope, hey, everybody's paying attention and following the rules now, so that we have a robust, thriving, big game hunting season in Colorado when those seasons pop up. We're getting closer.
Yeah.
September archery season's just around the corner.
Yeah.
But we're not quite there yet. And so, hopefully everybody's doing what they can to keep their communities safe. And I certainly think most of the communities in Colorado are doing what they can to try to minimize things for that hunting season, especially in those communities, where you go to places like Craig and Meeker and these smaller towns that it's their lifeblood, the hunting season. They are so dependent on it that, without it really does hurt them. So I think people are doing everything they can to make sure that Colorado's ready. And, that's all we can do.
So as of right now, the plan, it's business as normal. We can, for the non-residents that are listening to this podcast, as of right now, come October, it's still planned that they could come into the state, purchase a over-the-counter license at a private vendor, or they can go online and buy a over-the-counter license. It's still business as normal as of right now for over-the-counter.
As we talk, the plan is those licenses are going to be available. Okay. And, there are no... People say, well, are there restrictions? Or, are we going to be allowed to hunt? From the Colorado Parks and Wildlife perspective, absolutely. Now, do things change a bit based on, counties? Could a county come out and say, oh, well, we don't want people here? Possibly. We don't know those things at every local level. We think most counties, the millions and millions of dollars in economic value that they gain from hunting seasons. But when you talk about something like a pandemic, if it's bad, could we see counties do things? Certainly.
Yeah.
So what people need to really kind of have in their pocket is be flexible, and just be ready to go. And I think everybody's got their fingers crossed. Now, we understand that there's people that maybe can't come. We have a refund policy for medical emergencies. Right now, that refund policy is extended to international visitors. So if a person from another country, if the hunting season shows up and that country says, no, you cannot travel, then they can apply for a refund. It hasn't been, we don't have that refund exemption set up yet for other states because none of those restrictions are in place. But down the road, if we get there, those are the kind of things we're going to have to talk about, is how do we deal with, the guy that got a license in the primary draw, not necessarily that over-the-counter guy. How do we deal with the guy that got the license in the primary draw, and what if he's not able to travel?
Right.
So there's big implications, scary implications, but we're not there yet. And I think everybody's, like I said, pulling for, hey, maybe it'll be a great year and it'll be, clean and easy and things will settle down.
Well, I think everybody's really looking forward to this year's, especially with the date changes for some of these hunts and things like that. This has kind of been a year that many of us have looked at the calendar thinking, 2020 is going to be a really fun year in Colorado with some of those date changes, especially for mule deer. And so, you're really good at this, Randy, because you were kind of reading my mind as you were explaining that whole thing. Because as a question popped up in my mind, you were answering, because I wondered about, a reimbursement or a refund policy, if that would be a possibility, things like that. And so I guess for right now, most of us as hunters, most people listening to this podcast, can still be hopeful, still have that, your fingers crossed that things will still be open. It'll be business as normal when it comes time for September, October, November, and we'll still be able to hunt like we've been able to do. There's no restrictions planned by the Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
There is nothing that, we are planning, but we are not, moving forward with restrictions. We're kind of looking at those, okay, what if things, because we want to be ready if something happens. But we're certainly, I think, like everybody else, hoping for the best. So what I tell you is, keep doing the target shooting, keep, training yourself and getting in shape for that hike up that hill at 11,000 feet. Keep doing all those things. Make sure the camper's prepped, because darn it, for now, the Colorado big game hunting season is a go.
Awesome.
Now, does that mean things won't change? Who knows? I don't have a crystal ball. If I had a crystal ball, I would have bought Microsoft a long time ago.
If they change, I promise that Randy and I will be on a call, and we will keep you guys updated on what those changes are if they change. We'll keep our fingers crossed that they don't. Just make sure that when you're doing that training and getting ready for those hikes at 11,000 feet, you're doing it with a mask on, because it is a requirement right now to wear a mask in public areas in Colorado. And I'll tell you what, the mountains are just as crowded as the corner store down here right now. So,
well, one good snowstorm and all the fair weather outdoor people they'll go home. So,
yes, they will.
We'll be ready.
Amen, brother. Amen. Oh, goodness. Well, that's good to know, and I appreciate that information. I know my listeners will really appreciate that, because as we posted that article, that's most of the questions that we had come in. They're just so nervous. Hey, I drew this tag finally this year. Do you guys have any insight on what's going to happen? Is it still a go? And where can I find information? And so I think this will, if nothing else, will bring them the confidence that it's still, as of right now, and again, like you said, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, but as of right now, those of you that have those tags, rest assured that right now you're still looking okay. So will there be some
still
restrictions? I'm sure. One more question for you, Randy, before we get out of here. Do you see any other repercussions, or let me rephrase that? Are there any other repercussions that you're aware of from the coronavirus that relates to hunters in Colorado? Is there anything else going on that hunters should know?
When it comes to coronavirus, when we talk about COVID-19, it's a pretty simple answer of it's just this virus. But I think there's a bigger picture thing out there that sports people really, really need to be cognizant of. Because if you go to the origins, or at least the supposed origins of COVID-19, of the coronavirus, it all goes back to these, what they call wet markets in China, and they believe this originated, probably comes from viruses in bats. So it is, in its nature, a zoonotic virus, one that originates from animals. Mm-hmm. And if we see this kind of an impact from that, after this all kind of settles down and people start to go, well, oh no, what's next? Or what could possibly threaten us? And as they take a look at those zoonotic diseases across the board, do we start to have bigger conversations about things like chronic wasting disease? For now, chronic wasting disease is a health issue that there seems to be no evidence that it can make that jump from big game species to humans. And so for most sports people, they might test an animal for chronic wasting disease, and they might, pass on it if it comes back as the positive test, as we would recommend. Mm-hmm. But if chronic wasting disease changes, as disease has a tendency to morph and change over time, what happens when 5% of the animals that are harvested may be positive for something that could cause bigger health questions for the hunter, for the person that consumes it? That's the kind of thing that can really threaten the entire tradition of hunting. And so I think disease is something, as sports people, we need to be cautious, cognizant about. We need to be doing things like testing for chronic wasting disease, even when it's voluntary in units, and making sure that the scientists, the researchers with organizations like Colorado Parks and Wildlife have enough information to understand it, to track it, to respond to it, to search for, cures and ways to minimize it, and to pull off the management changes that have to occur. So COVID-19 is just COVID-19. But I think over time, bigger questions come around. And are there other diseases and issues that are out there that we're just not aware of right now? that we need to be really, really watching for and talking about and making sure that we all know what's going on and that we may be able to respond to it better. So it's a good question, and I'm glad you asked it.
Yeah, well, and that should get a lot of people's attention as well, because I think there are a lot of people that, yeah, this is COVID, and it's just COVID. But when you think about disease as a whole and these viruses and the impact that it could have on a passion that a lot of us, I'm not going to say dedicate our life to, but, for myself, I'll speak for myself, hunting is a huge part of my life. And without it, that'd be a pretty big hole. And one thing that could take it away from me is disease. And like you said,
Sure.
Chronic wasting disease hasn't done it yet. Are there other viruses that will pop up? Absolutely. I mean, that's the world in which we live nowadays. There's always going to be a new virus, a new strain. I mean, just like COVID-19. COVID's been around for a long time. This is a new strain of it. And so could there be a new strain that's passed between, like you said, this is an animal-based virus, or, originated from an animal. Could this pass between animal and human and then develop into a different kind of strain, and that starts killing the population of animals, and before we know it, we're not able to hunt and enjoy the passion that we all love so much. So you're absolutely right, Randy, and I appreciate you saying that, and I hope that resonates in a lot of our listeners that listen to this podcast, that we need to be aware of these things, we need to be informed of these things, and we need to make sure that those that can do something about it, the professionals in this field, are able to have what they need to be able to help control this as much as we can control it.
It's easy to sit back and to think, or at least it was 6 months ago, and to think, boy, we don't want to talk about chronic wasting disease that way, because what if it starts having impacts just because people have fear? And unfortunately, what we've seen now is we can't be complacent. We have to have these conversations. Because complacency in not understanding something, not having all the scientific facts, leads us to a world where we are responding on a day-to-day basis, as we have seen with COVID, as governments at all levels try to figure out what science to trust this week, and so we don't want to end up there. We have to be having these conversations, and chronic wasting disease is one that I think we owe it to ourselves as sports people to talk about openly, to make sure we're researching, and not just to close up and go, that'll never happen to hunting. Because I will tell you this, 2 years ago, I go to a concert, and I go, it's just great that we get to go to concerts, and nothing will ever change that. And, welcome to 2020, the year of, quiet amphitheaters. So, you can sit back and go, oh, well, it'll never do anything to hunting. Hunting's just, it's tradition. It's the way it's always been. That may not be as true anymore. We hope that it'll never change, that it'll never be something that's taken away from us. But we darn well better be researching and doing the work, or we get left behind.
Well, look how quickly things changed. I mean, we
Sure.
changed an entire world in a matter of days and weeks when the coronavirus hit, and our whole hunting, life, like I said, our passion could change even quicker. It could be one day something happens, a virus of some kind, and it could be chronic wasting disease as it evolves, and boom, flip of the switch, and we're not able to enjoy the passion that we love so much. And so you're absolutely right, Randy. I appreciate you bringing that up. That's a great comment and a great way to end this podcast and let people kind of think on that a little bit and do what they feel is necessary. Be involved, everybody that's listening. Be involved, be informed, participate, get out there, get educated, do everything you can to help continue this passion, continue the opportunity that we have to be in the outdoors, be with be where we want to be. I always want to be in the outdoors, and Randy and I kind of talked about it before we hit the record button, that his job lets him do that, or maybe we did it after you hit the record button. But you could be where you want to be all the time, and that's a fantastic place to be, and that's where we all kind of strive to be.
Well, Darren, we appreciate you. We appreciate the podcast. We really, and I would just say if people are listening, stay involved. There seems to be the opposition to hunting, the opposition to some of the management things that our agency does is very outspoken and is very, very loud. And I know it's a challenge for the commissioners, the Colorado Parks and Wildlife commissioners. You mentioned the state wildlife area thing. They're hearing from a lot of people that go, oh, no, it's not fair to make me buy a fishing license. I don't support fishing. And, it's easy to sit back and go, well, tell them not to go on the state wildlife area then.
Wow.
But it's not that simple sometimes for commissioners that are, responding to concerns from the public. They need to hear from sports people as well. They need people that say, that send a quick email and say, hey, I support this, or I support more research for chronic wasting disease, or I really appreciate the fact that Colorado was one of the few states that kept state parks open throughout all of the virus stuff and weren't shutting us out and giving us nowhere to go. Communicate the things you like with those that that support similar things. Talk to the commissioners, talk to the people at the agency, and let them know. And for those of you that are in other states, do it in your states.
Yes.
Sports people need to be talking and need to be encouraging the agencies that try and manage all of this stuff. Because we're getting lots of noise from people that maybe don't support or don't understand. And oftentimes supporters kind of sit back.
Yeah. It's kind of our tendency to be quiet, to be kind
Sure.
of that conservative, we kind of sit back and aren't loud, and sometimes
Sure.
we need to be. Randy, let me ask you this. Where's the best way to contact folks in regards to those, or if people have questions even about our topic today, how's the best way to contact the department?
Absolutely best thing to do, go to our website, cpw.state.co.us. CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, cpw.state.co.us, and just, you can go from in there. There's a tab for About Us that'll lead you to the Parks and Wildlife Commission and contact information for those folks, as well as, information on all of our offices. If you need information from us, we try to do a very, very good job about communicating with our public. We want sports people to be successful in our state. We want them to come out and help us achieve our management goals. And that harvest is really, really important to keeping our herds healthy and vital, and doing things like managing chronic wasting disease by making sure that we're harvesting, deer that are more likely to be susceptible to it. So, all the goals are there, but all the information is there. Everything's available, cpw.state.co.us.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. And we will try to keep you updated as possible. We try to share as much as we can from, what the Colorado Parks and Wildlife posts on social media to press releases that they put out there. We try to keep you all informed on our website as well, ehunter.com. That's ehuntr.com. We'll try to keep you up to date as things come out, and then as things change with the coronavirus issue, as we get closer to hunting season, if there are major changes, I will try to get Randy on another call and get some more information out to you guys. So, Randy, I want to thank you again. Appreciate you taking the time with me today. Appreciate all that you guys are doing there at the department. And if we can help out in any way, just let us know, okay?
We'll do that. Thank you so much for having us on, giving us a few minutes.
My pleasure. Thank you. You have a great day, okay?
You too. Take care.
Bye. All right, guys. Thanks again for joining us on this podcast. Appreciate you guys and your support. Again, want to thank Vortex Optics for all that they do for us. Also want to thank Sneak Tech Boots. Sneak Tech has been a sponsor of the podcast this month. We are grateful for them, their partnership, and the relationship that we have with them. Those guys are awesome. If you guys haven't checked out Sneak Tech Boots, go online, check them out, grab you some of those boots. We're getting really close to archery season, and if you're a spot and stock kind of archery hunter, I promise you'll want those boots clipped onto your backpack. They are truly awesome. So again, that's Sneak Tech Boots. Go check them out. Again, guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. Be sure that you like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Until next time, see you guys.